So, according to HO basically states that a capital abundant country, a capital abundant country will specialize and export capital intensive goods. And a labor abundant country will specialize. That means basically will specialize and export labor intensive goods and a labor abundant country. So this is the basic statement of the HO model. And to prove this,
This talk is now being recorded.
we'll consider we'll consider only there are two types of definition under HO model. One is called physical definition, physical definition, and another is called price definition. Now, what is physical definition? We know what is physical definition. According to physical definition, if K by L in country 1 is suppose greater than K by L in country 2. So you can say that, or if you measure in terms of L by K is lower in country 1 and higher, relative value is higher in country 2. Then you can say that country 1 is capital abundant, country 2 is labor abundant. If country 1 is capital abundant and country 2 is labor abundant, and if we consider X is labor intensive and Y is capital intensive, then during trade, country 2 will specialize on X and country 1 will specialize on Y. So this is the basic concept of the physical definition. Okay, so we prove it graphically, prove it mathematically. Okay, that when K by L rises, the production of the good, which is that is the relative production, that is relative production of the capital intensive good will rise. Okay, up to this, okay, students have attended the class. I think can understand that matter because this is normal our physical definition concept. It is okay. Okay, the physical definition ছিল নোটস আমি শেয়ার করে দিচ্ছি now next part price definition. Now why price definition? What is the problem related to the physical definition? Now to understand that matter, okay, I take a very simple example, that is not example, a graph to understand this matter. To understand the matter. Suppose in country 1 and country 2, in country 1, that is K by L B, K by relative supply and demand. Okay. And here you measure, suppose R by W, relative price and relative supply. So simple. For any product, this is a factor. Okay. So our relative supply, this is K by L supply in country 2. This is K by L supply in country 1. So at any R by W, okay, that is K by L ratio, supply is greater. So when supply is greater, if we consider the K by L demand in country 1 and K by L demand in country 2 both are identical, then this is R by W in country 2 and this is R by W in country 1. So it is clear that the capital is relatively cheaper in country 1 or the labor is relatively cheaper in country 2. So from this one, it is very clear that capital is relatively cheaper in country 1 and labor is relatively cheaper in country 2. Okay, so high K by L automatically implies the production cost of the capital intensive product is lower in country 1, and for the labor intensive good, the price is lower in country 2. Okay, so we can easily find out the pattern of trade. But the problem is that in this example, we consider the relative demand is identical. Relative demand is identical. Suppose the relative demand is not identical, and for this is for country 2, K by L 2, okay, K by L B relative demand for country 2. But in country 1, this is your relative demand. So see, the pattern basically this is called demand bias. So when there is demand bias, then the cost relative expenditure or the relative price of capital is higher in country 1. So it suggests capital is expensive in country 1, okay, and capital is relatively cheaper in country 2. So in country 2, if the country 2 takes capital intensive technique, that's better for the economy. Got it? So this particular, that means from this diagram, we can find out one thing that K by L greater. Okay, this is obviously a good sign that the country has some, that means advantage on the capital. But the problem is that the supply is not the ultimate thing to find out the pattern of trade, because to find out the pattern of trade, the relative demand is equally important. So that's why if the capital, that is the demand for relative capital is higher, K by L, relative capital demand is higher, then the capital may be relatively expensive in the country, though in K by L S is greater. So see, this is the essence of the price, that means price definition. So according to price definition, if your W by R2 is less than W by R1, it suggests country 2 is labor abundant, or this one implies R by W in country 1, this one is lower than R by W in country 2. So it implies country 1 is capital abundant. So in that way, first identify the abundancy. So now again, HO theorem shows that if any country is labor abundant with respect to this, the country should specialize on labor intensive good, or should specialize on capital intensive good. So till now, this is one of the till now we are not here. We are not discussing about the price definition. Price definition asini. This is the that means upgradation. That is why price definition is better compared to the physical definition, or the problem associated with the physical definition. Physical definition এর সাথে যে প্রবলেমটা আছে ওটাই শুধুমাত্র এখন অবধি আমরা ডিসকাস করলাম। In physical definition, so K by L is the K by L relative supply of capital, it is not sufficient. Okay. Okay. Next step. So up to this clear, the problem associated. Yeah. এর আগে অবধি কি বলেছি যে K by L greater means the country is abundant in capital, so the country can easily specialize on capital intensive goods. Okay, এটা প্রুভ করেছিলাম লাস্টে। বাট এখানে বলছে K by L supply of K by L is greater in country 1, but look, the capital is relatively expensive in country 1. And from our basic problem of the economy, ekdom economics er first day, what to produce, how to produce. How to produce means that is capital intensive or labor intensive. তখন কি বলতাম যে we should choose, we can choose labor intensive. If labor is relatively cheaper, go for labor intensive. Capital is relatively cheaper, go for capital intensive technology. Okay, so in that case, though K by L is greater in country 1, but R by W is greater, that is capital is relatively expensive. Okay, so যেখানে capital বেশি but capital is relatively expensive. Okay, in next semester in development area, okay, we'll discuss that is a very interesting topic which is called choice of technique. And that time we can also see that maybe the country is labor abundant, and the labor abundant country can opt labor capital intensive technology. Hi. Okay, so this is just a HO model. Okay, so HO বলছে if the country is capital abundant, they should specialize on capital intensive goods. Okay, that is okay. Statement is still okay, but price physical definition বলছে abundancy depends on K by L, but price definition says that no, abundancy depends on the relative price, that is W by R, R by W. Okay, not K by L. K by L is just a factor, which is K by L greater. So in that sense, the physical definition compared to physical definition, price definition is better. Hey, do you think physical price definition is better than physical definition? This one, yes, better. Okay, now establish the HO theorem on the basis of price definition. Okay, so the price definition of the HO, basically that price definition of factor abundance takes into account the demand and supply condition both. Okay, so a country's capital reach, labor reach, okay, at the pre-trade autark equilibrium, it depends. Okay, so this one implies that is a abundancy in pre-trade situation depends on our W by R. Okay, so it's not K by L, it depends on W by R. If your W by R is lower, the country is labor abundant. If the W by R is greater, then vice versa, the country is capital abundant. Okay, now see, to take one graph, a simple graph. We measure L, we measure K. A, B. Wait. Before this, let's start with the concept of unit isoquant. Next day, প্রুভমেন্টটা ক্যারি করবে, জেরক্স আছে যাই আছে কিছু জায়গা ওখান থেকে একটু পড়বে অফলাইন ক্লাসে। ইউনিট আইসো কোয়ান্ট। আচ্ছা, আরেকটা ইয়ে বলে দিই, টিউসডে পাঁচটা থেকে ক্লাস, টিউসডে ক্লাস থাকে তো আমার কাছে। কলেজ তো কারো খুলছে না, কারো কলেজ খুলে যাচ্ছে না তো? ভেরি গুড, তাহলে আমি বলে দেবো কি কিভাবে ক্লাস নেবো। মানে আমি ফিন্যান্সও পড়াবো, ইকোট্রিক্সও পড়াবো। ও তার পরের দিন ওর মাঝেই একদিন হিস্ট্রিটাও পড়িয়ে দেবো। ইউনিট আইসো কোয়ান্টা কি? সাপোজ কিউ is a function of kx comma lx. Okay. Then homogeneity of degree 1. So qx lambda qx function of lambda kx lambda lx. This is a homogeneous of degree 1, linearly homogeneous. Basically, in solo model, you know, we divide both side by L. No. This time, let lambda equals to x. So, applicable for x, y, any output. Lambda equals to 1 by q. So, then this is 1 by lambda equals to 1 by q. This side becomes 1. This is function of k by q. This is l by q. এটা হয়, দেখে নেবো ভালো করে, আসছেন কিছু ব্যাপারে। ওকে, what is unit isoquant? When you measure unit isoquant, so normally what is isoquant? Combination of labor and capital to produce 1 unit of so that is where the output is fixed, that is the different locus of all the different combination of uh, k and l, along which your output is constant. Your output is constant. Okay, so this one you can say that 1 is a function of akx akq comma x, তাহলে তোমাদের আবার বুঝতে এক্সটাই লিখছি, এক্সটা লিখি তাহলে তোমাদের বুঝতে একটু সুবিধা হবে। akx lx akx lx. So when you take lx and akx and derive the isoquant, this is called unit isoquant. So unit isoquant means, okay, any point on the isoquant implies the output level is 1 because output equals to 1. So this is the concept of unit isoquant. Now why akx alx? What is your akx? Amount of capital to produce 1 unit of x, amount of labor to produce 1 unit of x. So you produce qx amount of output by using kx amount of capital. You produce qx amount of output by using lx amount of labor. So to produce 1 unit of x, your capital requirement is this. To produce 1 unit of x, your labor requirement is this. So this one is your AKX and this one is your ALX, a function of this. So this is the concept of our unit isoquant. Okay, similarly you can take and draw the unit isoquant of y commodity. Up to this clear? Concept of unit isoquant. Okay, okay.
স্যার 1 মিনিট দাঁড়ান দাঁড়ান দাঁড়ান।
বারবার বলছি, নোটস তার সাথে ক্লাস নোটস, অনেক ডেরিভেশন আছে যেগুলো নোটসে সব কিছু দেখানো স্টেপ বাই স্টেপ অতটা ইয়ে করে পসিবল না। কিছু কিছু ডেরিভেশন এরকম হয় যখন মানে লাস্ট দুটো ইয়ারের কোশ্চেন দেখেছি এদিকে, তখন আরে এই জায়গাটা পড়ালে ভালো হয়, ওটা তার নোটসের মাঝখানে যখন অ্যাড হবে না, ওটা তখন ক্লাসের মধ্যে ওটা পড়ানো চলতে হবে।
হ্যাঁ স্যার মুছে দিন।
টেকনিক্যালি একটু জিনিস বোঝাই, প্রুফ করবো তো। এল কি এ বি, unit isoquant of y, unit isoquant of x। ভালো করে দেখবে, এটা একটু বুঝিয়ে আসি। সাপোজ দিস ইজ ইউর বাজেট লাইন এ বি, your income equals to m, এই তো। So if we take a point like k or j, what is your expenditure? If you buy the point k or j, what is your expenditure? M. At a and b, m। আমি এভাবে লিখতে পারি, ইনকাম m equals to OA amount of y or OB amount of x, লেখা যায় তো? সেম থিং, সেম। Okay, so at point k your expenditure you can measure as, that is in terms of goods you can measure. So in terms of good, this is OA amount of y or OX amount of, sorry, OB amount of x. Okay, clear? দেখো, And করছি তো, বেরিয়ে যাচ্ছে। Clear? So similarly, if kj equivalent to this amount of y or this amount of a, then so if we consider any point like E or F, this one implies, this one basically implies your expenditure at E, that is your A, to produce Y, your capital labor cost in terms of capital OA, in terms of capital OK, OA, and in terms of labor is OB. Okay. So here X and Y represents unit isoquant for X and Y. Okay. And the isoquant line AB. So when you know if this is isoquant line AB, this angle is basically W by R. So this is W by R. Okay. This one represents basically the relative price of labor in country one. So this is isocost line of country one. Okay. Now we derive two isocost line for country two. Two isocost line. This one and that one. Suppose C D M N. Point is G. Suppose H. Follow the graph. Here CD and MN both are parallel and both are basically, these are basically the isocost line of country 2. Now look, AB is the isocost line of country 1 and these are the isocost line of country 2. Why flatter? Because we consider W by R1 is greater than W by R2. W by R1 is greater than W by R2. Try to understand step by step. So that's why AB is steeper because this slope is A. You can extend the line. Okay, if you extend, so that one is lower. Okay. Now follow. According to the graph, okay, you derive Y, you derive X. That means you take Y, you take X. Sir, take intersect, but we know isoquant cannot intersect with each other. That is different thing. For a particular product, that is if you derive the isoquant for the product X, X1, X2, X3, X4, X5, that cannot intersect. For Y, Y1, Y2, Y3, Y4, Y4, Y5, they cannot intersect. But this time you take X and Y are two separate isoquant. Okay. And here, if you take a same for take any output and same amount of labor, okay. So this one implies basically unit isoquant, that is to produce 1 unit of X and to produce 1 unit of Y. So if same amount of labor, if you consider, just check your capital requirement is higher. Suppose you take same labor, L star, But look, kx and this is ky. So k by yield ratio is greater for y or for x?
For Y.
For y. So k by l greater means y is basically capital intensive, x is basically labor intensive. Okay, you don't require to explain this here because everything within for the 2 or 3 marks for maximum time question thakbe for 4 marks. Okay, difference or maximum 5 marks. State HO theorem dilo suppose 1 mark or for 4 marks. Difference between physical definition and price definition. So physical definition 2 marks, price definition 2 marks. So within 2 marks, it is not possible to highlight on the graph why is capital intensive according to the graph and why x is labor intensive. It is not possible because our main objective is to prove where the W by R is lower, the country is capital labor abundant, and the country should go for the labor intensive goods. This is our target. But that's it. So you cannot waste your time to explain why curve y is capital intensive product and x is labor intensive product. ওগুলো লেখাও থাকবে না, ওগুলো অত ওইসব নোটের মধ্যেও মেনশন করা থাকবে না সবসময়, ওগুলো বুকগুলো তো মেনশন করা থাকে না। ওকে, ইউ হ্যাভ টু আন্ডারস্ট্যান্ড ফ্রম দিস ডায়াগ্রাম। ওকে, তাই আমি এটা ক্লিয়ার করে দিলাম। and this is your assumption. Okay, why assumption means according to your graph W by R2 is lower. So thus for country 1, okay, look, the AB line indicates OA amount of capital. This equals to OB amount of labor, this or that, because A is a point, so that is you can produce any 1 unit of X or 1 unit of Y, same, because we know any point on the iso cost line implies same cost. Okay, budget line, if you take this point, so a mix of X, Y, that expenditure, or if you take this or that point, that expenditure are same. So if you say this amount of Y equivalent to this amount of X, or this amount of X plus this amount of Y, equivalent. So in that sense, this amount of capital equal this amount of labor. So equal in the sense of their expenditure. Okay, got it? Thus, for producing 1 unit of X or 1 unit of Y, since this is our unit iso quant, okay, that means 1 unit of X and 1 unit of Y. So see, E is the point, OA amount of capital. You can use full OA amount of capital or OB amount of labor. Okay, but for country 2, to produce 1 unit of Y, to produce 1 unit of Y, it requires this amount of capital. Okay, and to produce 1 unit of X, this amount of capital. So to produce 1 unit of, so here we measured everything all in terms of capital. So look, in terms of capital, this is the key area to understand this matter. For the country 1, we take the X and Y both tangent at E and F, that is on the same iso quant. So to produce 1 unit of Y, 1 unit of Y require OA amount of capital, 1 unit of X, OA amount of capital. But for country 2, this is for country 1. Now for country 2, to produce 1 unit of Y, G tangency, so CD is your iso cost line, OC amount of capital, to produce 1 unit of X, OM amount of capital. Okay. So it is clear that for country 1 there is same amount, but for country 2 Y is relatively expensive. Y is relatively expensive in country 2. It's more costly in country 2. And commodity X is relatively cheaper in country 2. Relatively cheaper, relatively expensive. So it is clear that country 2 will specialize on X, and similarly country 1 will specialize on Y. And we already consider that we start our diagram and everything by taking W by R is lower in country 2. So labor abundant, capital abundant. And according to our graph, Y is capital intensive, X is labor intensive. So this is your HO theorem by taking price definition. Sorry. That means where the W by R is lower, the country should go for labor intensive technique. The country go for labor intensive technique. So I repeat, when you consider or derive any isoquant, that is any isocost line, that isocost line implies any point on the curve your expenditure is same. So if you take any point, suppose a budget line, you take a point where at the midpoint, that is where this is tangent, a tangent nile. So what the expenditure, sir, actually when you derive a budget line, suppose this is your IC, this is your equilibrium. So ekhane you purchase this amount of X and that amount of Y. Okay. So your expenditure on X star X plus Y star Y, that value equals to your M, and that value equals to OA in terms of goods, OA amount of Y. In terms of X, OB amount of X. ব্যাপারটা তো same. Because A, B, E all lie on the same budget line. So same thing is there. So you take a isoquant and measure. So here ultimately convert everything in terms of the capital. So if E point and F point both on the AB line. So expenditure at E equals to that E, you take this amount of capital and that amount of labor. Your expenditure, or if you convert in terms of capital, is that point same. So expenditure and E means OA amount of capital. Expenditure of F, that is to produce 1 unit of X, is OA amount of capital. But in case of country 2, tangent with two different isocost line, that is lower isocost, higher isocost. So it's relatively lower cost. So at G point is a labor capital, your expenditure, or at C, your expenditure in terms of capital, OC. For X, expenditure in terms of capital of 1 unit of X. So when you compare in country 2, X is relatively cheaper. So when X is relatively cheaper, we can say that X is labor intensive, and the labor abundant country 2 can specialize on X.
তাহলে এটি হচ্ছে কান্ট্রি 1 এর আইসোকস্ট লাইন।
হ্যাঁ বলো।
তাহলে এবিটা হচ্ছে আমাদের কান্ট্রি,
সেটাই তো করলাম। হ্যাঁ, এবি আইসোকস্ট লাইন, আর ওটা তাই তো স্টিপার, তাই তো করেছি না, W/R1 is greater than W/R2,
মানে
আইসোকস্ট লাইনের স্লোপ।
আমাদের আইসোকস্ট
কেটে গেল তোমার কথার লাস্টে।
বলছি কান্ট্রি 1 এর তাহলে আমাদের আইসোকস্ট ফিক্সড।
হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ, ওটাতেই তো সেম ইয়েটা করলাম না, নাহলে তো কম্পারিজনটা পাবো না। ওরটা চেঞ্জ করে দেখাচ্ছি, ওর দুটোতেই ওটাতেই ট্যানজেন্ট হচ্ছে, ওর ওখানে ট্যানজেন্ট হচ্ছে, মানে ইন টার্মস অফ ক্যাপিটাল যেরকম হয় না যে তোমার রিলেটিভ সাপ্লাই দুটোই বেশি, তাই আমি সেটাই দেখালাম যে K/L the all time greater for any product. So K/L is not necessary. So the key thing is W/R. ক্লিয়ার করে, এরপর আমরা একটু ম্যাথমেটিক্সে যাব। ওটা একটু ধরে ধরে করিয়ে ওই জায়গাটাকে কমপ্লিট করে দেবো। ওকে, ক্লিয়ার? ডায়াগ্রাম ড্র করে নাও, যা লেখার লিখে নাও, এরপর একটু সেম আগের দিন যেভাবে প্রুফ করেছিলাম সেভাবেই এবার প্রুফটা হবে, বাট প্রাইস ডেফিনেশনটা ম্যাথমেটিক্যালি প্রুফ করবো। দিস টাইম উইল কনসিডার ফিক্সড টেকনোলজি, fixed coefficient, variable coefficient, both. Fixed coefficient technology. Now we consider a comparative scenario. এটা নোটের থেকেও এইটা ক্লাস নোটটা একটু ফলো করো, বেটার থাকবে। px equals to walx r into akx. Now fixed coefficient means these are called our coefficients. These are our coefficients, right? Labor coefficient alx into qx plus ly into qy equals to l bar. Okay, ওই clear? So these are basically constants. So similarly, for country y, can take py equals to w r aqy. Okay, you know what is alx, what is akx, we already show this. Now you take px by py, simple maths. So walx plus r akx by wly plus r aky. Next line, suppose we take r common. So this one we may write as w by r alx plus akx. Further, from this line r common, w by r ly plus aky. Simple, r common, r common. Okay, so your r cancel out. Now further we take, or you can directly take r akx common, that's better. Okay, and direct means এখানে তাইলে r akx common, সেটা হয়ে যাবে w by r alx by akx plus 1, better. স্টেপ দেখাতে হবে না। So r aky common. Okay, so w by r ALY by AQY plus 1. R cancel. Same. No, don't worry. Next, in the next line, you can take AQY, AKX form. Okay. Suppose we denote this AKX by AKY by B. B. Or you can take AKX by AQY. The term B. And this one is W by R. So this is what is ALX by AKX? Anyone? Any idea of
Labor
or of
capital
meaning?
ratio to produce 1 unit of X.
Very good. Labor capital ratio to produce 1 unit of X. That is your labor capital ratio on the unit isoquant. On the unit isoquant. And this one is basically your labor capital ratio. Why? See. To take LX. Your LX means ALX by ALX by AKX নিয়েছি তাই না? নিলাম এটা ALX by AKX এই হচ্ছে ALX by এটা তুমি না AKX ক্লাস তো করেছি ALX was LX by QX KX by QX so LX by KX similarly what is your LY your LY becomes LY by AKY that is LY by QY by KY by QY that is LY by KY. LY by KY. So this one is nothing but LX, LY are labor capital ratio in X sector, labor capital ratio in Y sector. Okay.
Sir, small beta ki AKX by AKY.
AKX by AKY. Just because this is fixed coefficient, so there is no problem. You can take the ratio as a constant.
Okay.
Okay. So now what is our objective? Our objective is to check that when your W by R rises, in previous case, previous means in physical definition, we check when K by L rises, then impact on Px by Py. Because that time, তোমার target ছিল মানে production Qx not Px by Py, Qx by Qy. The K by L rises, Qx by Qy rises or falls. That means when high K by L, high impact on the production of labor intensive goods. The relative supply of labor intensive goods will increase. But this time our objective is to find out the price definition. So W by R, Px by Py, their relationship. Look. Simply take D Px by Py by D W by R. Thus, here your all the coefficient that is B, everything, these are constant. These are constant this time. So when you take the derivative, this is W by R Ly plus 1 whole square. This side W by R Ly plus 1 constant. So already B term is there. B you can take as a constant term. Okay, you can take B as a constant term. So then this one is constant within the bracket. you are taking differentiation with respect to W by R. So W by R into LX. LX is constant because your coefficients are constant. So W by R derivative 1, only LX is there. Then minus, then again, now this portion is constant. W by R, LX plus 1, and derivative of this is only Ly. So check when you differentiate and calculate the value, this dpx by py by tw by r becomes. So b is a constant term, so you can take b, okay. But a w by r ly lx minus w by r lx ly will cancel out. Only lx into 1, the lx term is there, minus ly into 1, only ly term is there, by w by r into ly plus 1 square. So derive up to this first, then complete. Now next part, just explanation, logical explanation. First derive up to this and see up to this. Is there any confusion? দিতেই পারে কিন্তু